All right, good morning, everyone. It's a couple days after Christmas, right? So what's coming up next? It's the new year, right? So New Year's Eve is Friday. So I'm not sure what you guys have planned for that. Just remember, 2022 is here and basically has already started. What we mean by that is that your business plan should be in place. If not, definitely work on that. On Thursday, we're gonna work on that. To kind of set something. If you haven't done your business plans yet, I'll give you the easiest business plan to have. And again, as I've been talking about with you, is to be successful. I think you really need to have goals, right? Goals are what we do with the money that we will earn, right? Because remember, money just gives us options, right? Options to do more, to take more time off, to do something good with it, do something charitable or something, to grow your own family or your own financial base, right? So again, remember, money just gives us options, right? It's what we do with it or what we are going to do with it that's going to get us excited to earn the money, right? Because if we're not excited about what we're going to do, then, what are we working so hard about, right? Okay, so today we're just going to continue with the RPA, just doing some Q&A. So let me just bring up my contract right now and we'll cover a couple things, right? Okay. As we said before, you guys see the purchase contract, right? We're on page 1. Yes. Somebody? Yes, no?
Yes.
I'm assuming you're seeing it. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Margaret. All right. So we know that page 1 is very easy, right? The main difference here is that we don't have the close of escrow up here. It's now on the grid system, right? Okay, so number 2, agency is very important, right? We've talked about that. What you guys are seeing are the templates, or it's my template, right? Something that we worked on last week. So make sure you watch our YouTube channel, okay? Team Intero East Bay on YouTube, one word, right? If you haven't had the link, check one of my old emails, is on there, right? As you can see there on 3B, that's where the 30 days go now, right? Then 3D1, next business day for the deposit, right? Rather than waiting 3 days to make your offer stronger. Okay. Now, Sujata asked a question regarding, for clarification regarding the financing, right? We all know E1, right, talks about the first loan, right? It says here first, right? So you put in the loan amount, right? And then determine if it's, conventional, which is standard, FHA or VA, if that's what it is. But typically, if you don't check anything, you're perfectly fine. It assumes that it's conventional. Now, on the additional finance amount, typically what you're going to have here is a second loan, right? And again, most second loans, right? And it's not common nowadays, although, if you do have one, this is where you would put it. Just like the first part, is it, conventional, which is standard. As you can see, there is no secondary financing for VA FHA, okay? VA FHA does not go in second place. They only go in first, right? Although you could have seller financing, okay? Now, you could also have seller financing on your first loan, but most of the time, seller financing happens on the second, right? Now, what could it be other, right? Not conventional, not seller financing. What could there be? Anyone? Right? It could be like a private loan, right? It could be a hard money loan, right? So it could be just private, okay? So if it's not conventional, it's a second from Bank of America or somebody, it would be seller financing. If it's not those, then it could be other, right? If it's not conventional, it's not seller financing, it's other, like a private money, right? Okay.
What about the gift?
Well, it would not be financed, right? Because this is financed, right?
Okay, this is for the finance.
This is financed, right? So occupancy type we have there, okay? So now that's the calculation. Now go to the second page. This is where a good clarification would be made, okay? Now, seller credit, remember, you don't remember we used to put, seller to pay, $10,000 towards buyer's non-recurring closing costs, right? Well, guess what? The contract has that line, seller to credit, right? If any, to buyer at X amount, right? Okay. Now it says here, right? Seller credit to be applied towards closing costs or what, right? Nothing else. The lender will not allow it for repairs or anything like that, right? So it could be, what other than closing costs, right? It's all closing costs, really, right? Now you could try to put repairs, right? But the lender's not going to allow that. So this other, I'm not sure what you could put here that the lender will allow. Typically, it's for closing costs, right? Now, what are closing costs, right? We're going to talk about that, I believe, tomorrow, right? Estimating the buyer and seller closing costs. What are closing costs that the buyer may incur? Well, loan origination fee, inspection fees, right? Property taxes, right? Anything that could be applied, right? That are closing costs that is charged to the buyer at closing, right? Points, right? Points to lower interest rate, right? Like I had one client where they had too much money, too much credit, right? Well, the seller is going to get that credit back because remember, the seller's credit will only pay for what is charged. So if it's not charged, then the seller will get that money back. So if I ask for 10,000 and the buyer's closing cost is only 7, there's an extra $3,000 there that's not spent. What happens to that? Per the contract, and most lenders will just say, hey, the buyer cannot get that as cash back. You can't lower the price unless there's something in writing. So what I typically do is I have the lender, get a lower interest rate by charging the buyer some points, right? Because remember, interest rate has points with it, either 0 points or you pay points to lower the interest rate. Okay, so in that case, we charge the buyer, 1 point to get a 0.25% lower interest rate, which makes his payments better, right? So sometimes that's something that you may want to do creatively, all right, in case you ask for too much credit, okay? All right, so on G2 now, additional finance terms. What do you put there? Well, typically what you would put there is like Sujata said, right? It's a gift. Let's say, down payment is, subject to getting down payment from parents or subject to getting down payment from cashing out stocks, right? Something like that. Subject to buyer, winning the lottery on Saturday, right? So basically, whatever additional terms that you could put there with regards to, the financing. Okay, so remember, first loan, right, is E1, right? So he has all the terms, right? Okay, the E2, secondary financing, right? Typically, you're not going to have third financing, okay? You could put it there if there's like a third loan or something, right? Or let's say you have a special loan program, like first-time home buyer program from the city, okay? Like some cities have special loan programs, or Cal HAFA, right? The California Housing Finance Agency has a down payment assistance. That's where you would put that, subject to getting special, first-time home buyer loan program from CHFA, right? California Housing Financing Agency, or subject to seller getting down payment from the employer, okay? Because remember, getting down payment is not a contingency. It's not part of the loan contingency unless you put it as a contingency, right? Loan contingency just says subject to me getting qualifying for a loan, okay? That's qualifying. Not getting any down payment or money for closing costs, okay? That's not a contingency. That's part of the contract, because I'm going to speed this up. If you look at letter 5, okay, hold on. If you look at letter 5, okay, in here, it talks about that the down payment is not a part of the contingency, okay? So, question?
Yeah, for the gift funds, do you have to really put that there, or
Well, you
just
have to put it in the contract, right? That the buyer is going to get the gift funds, unless the money is already on the buyer's account.
yeah, because sometimes sometimes everything's okay, and then later on the buyers who are short,
Yeah.
and then we have to solve the problem, right? And then we get our gift funds from relatives.
Yeah. So if it's not a contingency, right? If you don't want to make it a contingency, let's say it's just a solution later, you don't have to put it here. You're just going to be an addendum. Remember, this is before you get an acceptance, right? So whatever you put here is something that you're telling the seller, hey, these are the terms of my offer, right? So if you're not short right now, and you already have the money as part of your down payment and closing costs that you estimated, then you don't need to put anything here, right? Because you have the money in the buyer's accounts, right? So later on, let's say, there's a shortfall on the appraisal, or the buyer, or somehow the buyer wanted to pay points or something, and now they're short, or, they went to Las Vegas and they lost part of their down payment. They had too much fun. Well, then they're going to get a gift funds from somebody. That doesn't go in this contract. It goes in an addendum, because that happens after acceptance. Okay, is that clear, Aurora?
Thank you.
Okay, so anything that happens after you write an offer, you get an addendum or the modification of terms. Okay, so all right, so that's separate, or an amendment to the contract. Excuse me. Okay, amendment to the contract or an addendum. Okay, all right. So as you go through this grid system on the first 3 pages, this is where most of the confusion will happen and most of the questions are coming out. Just remember, put what it asks for. That's the purpose of this grid system, right? It's very easy to complete. So remember, one of my homework for you guys is to write a contract, right? Pretend, pick up a property, on the MLS that you want to buy in some, as a game, right? And write a contract for yourself, and then send it to me to review. Send it to myself or to your manager, and we can review it and see how you completed it. That way we can discuss, hey, why did you put this? Or hey, great, you completed it properly, but hey, consider this. Why do you have 7 days instead of 3 days, 10 days, whatever? And we can have a discussion. Because again, the way I teach you guys is you do by, you learn by doing, right? By doing things, you become better at it. If you don't do it, then you're not getting better, right? You're not learning it. Okay, so you learn by doing. All right, so these are, again, some of my standard templates, right? But again, all these time frames we've talked about, that we are, can be changed at any time. You don't need a 10-day loan contingency. You can have no loan contingency. You can have it at 17 or even higher, but it's probably not going to get accepted, right? In this type of market, okay? Okay. So, these are the rest, right? These are, on letter N is for the timelines, and then everything else, right? So again, just make sure you understand how we completed this template, right? You guys can, like I said, look at our YouTube channel, and we did this online, okay? Okay, and again, I'm gonna upload this video so you guys can see what we're doing here, right? The first 3 pages is basically where all the work happens, right? Okay, let me talk a little bit about this home warranty on Q, right? A couple of you guys, who have listings, right? Do your best to have the seller home warranty on it, or the seller coverage on your home warranties. We all know about the buyer coverage after closing. If you're a listing agent, my suggestion is for you to get the seller warranty. Okay. If you don't know what that is, call myself or your leadership team in your office, or your home warranty rep, and talk about the seller coverage. The reason I'm telling you guys that is right now it's winter, right? So there's a lot of furnace out there, right? Heaters, right? And those tend to break down, right? Because sometimes it hasn't been running, right, for the last couple of months. Now it's running, or it's been running and now then it stops during the listing period. Okay. Remember, the coverage, has some benefits to it. I think they cost like about $1.10 per day of the listing. So if your listing is, you have a 30-day or 6-month listing, it's not that bad. Okay. It'll cost you a couple $100, right? But it's good to get it as a listing tool, right? Because that's one of the benefits of listing with you, is that you will put this on their listing, right? Okay. And again, if the house doesn't sell, which is kind of hard right now in this market, right? So the house should sell, and then you're going to end up paying, a couple $100. I don't think you're going to have a 6-month listing. You may have like a 2-3-month listing. So you may end up paying $200-300 for a warranty for the seller. Now, the seller usually will still pay for the buyer warranty as part of that deal. Okay. So unless that's part of your marketing plan is to pay for the buyer's warranty too, then that continues. But remember, learn more about the seller coverage on your home warranty, because I got one call last week about a heater. Someone said, hey, I got this listing and the heater broke down. What should we do? I said, well, you need to fix it. Well, fortunately, she told me, oh, we have a seller warranty. I said, call that home warranty and get them to fix it, at least part of the coverage, or at least figure out what's going on to see if it's even covered. Hopefully it is, because remember, it has to be working before, and it was, right? And now it stopped working during the escrow period, because I think they're getting ready to close. So I said, hey, you can negotiate the buyer to take it as is, which probably the buyer doesn't want to. Remember, per the contract, right? If you read the contract, and we've discussed this, the seller must maintain the property in its current and present condition as it was when you went into escrow. Okay. So if everything is working, right, per the disclosures, right? So the buyer is assuming that everything needs to be working, right? Just like this, the heater has to be working, or the AC has to be working. Of course, you're not testing the AC unless you have a home inspection, But in this case, the sellers, turned on the heater one day and it stopped working. So that's how they found out. So now, of course, they call the agent and say, hey, what do we do? They tried to find an HVAC person. Didn't work out yet. So we said, hey, they told me, hey, there's a warranty. So let's use that. All right. So make sure if you have a listing right now, my suggestion is for you to use it. You use the seller coverage or get the seller coverage for all your listings. All right. So any questions so far? So far what we've discussed, right? Okay. So that's one of the things that I wanted to discuss is the maintenance part of the contract. Okay. The second thing in the contract, remember, if a seller is going to do work during the escrow period, okay, the seller is supposed to provide receipts, right, or a list of items that they're doing as part of the contract. Okay, so if a seller is going to hire a handyman or a contractor, they need to provide receipts and get permits as necessary. Okay, if not, you need to negotiate that as part of the request for repairs. Okay, so the contract calls for permits. Okay, so if you hire somebody, ask them if they're going to get permits or not. If not, then you need to disclose that to the buyer before agreeing to do any repairs. Right. So if let's say Steven writes an offer on my listing, right? He does his inspections, or there are inspections or what have you. And then of course, Steven will write a request for repair, right? Because that's what don't use an addendum, use the request for repair form, right? So in the request for repair form, Steven says, seller to, repair, all section 1 items, right? Or roof repairs. Of course, I'm either gonna agree to it. And again, when I agree to it, or when my seller agrees to it, I as an agent must explain to the seller that they need to get permits for it. Okay, and then we need to provide, either warranty information, receipts for the work, right? Okay. Otherwise, if something happens after closing, Steven is going to be holding the bag because he's going to say, hey, Greg, what's going on with the repairs you guys did, okay? Because Steven should ask for these things as part of the transaction, right? But some agents don't ask for it. So make sure if you are the buyer's agent and there's repairs done through escrow, that you ask for proof or warranty or receipts, permits, right? Because sometimes, some agents, will not do all those things because they're not aware it's in the contract. They assume everything's good, right? But again, what kind of receipts do we have to back us up after closing? So make sure you go through the contract and understand regarding the repairs. Okay. All right. So any questions regarding the RPA that we've as you now start to figure out what's in the grid system or anything like
I
that?
have a question, Greg.
Yes, Sujata.
Okay, so regarding the receipts, it's a good point that you bring it, right?
Mhm.
So most of the sellers, in these days, I noticed with my buyers,
Yeah.
they hire the handymans, which is
Yeah.
not licensed, and they
Mhm.
do not have the receipts.
Yeah.
So in that case, what are the best ways to handle that one? I did it via email communication with the agent,
Mhm.
and end of the day, he provided me seller's number and contact him directly on my last closings,
Okay.
So what is the best way to handle this situation? If you can give us a guidance on that.
All right, perfect. Okay. So as I go through the rest of this contract, okay, letter 6 talks about the down payment, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so that it's not a contingency, that you're providing proof. Okay, so that's number 6A, B, and C, right? We talk about condition of the property. This is where it says the property is sold as is, except for the maintenance part, right? The seller must maintain the property, right? They must still do the disclosures and all that stuff, right? So make sure you read that. Then we talk about if the seller stays over, right? Things like that, contingencies, right? Okay. The rest, I'm assuming you guys can see my contract, right? So if I'm speaking and you don't see what I'm talking about, make sure you speak up, all right? So here we talks about the condo, okay? Now, 8J, right? Right here, okay? Sale of buyer's property. This is part of the grid system, right? Okay. The COP form, we talked about that last week. So make sure you know what that is, right? Okay. And then of course, what's included and excluded, make sure you read all that, okay? Okay, now, remember, this talks about here on governmental repairs, we talk about here our point of sales, right? Like sewer lateral, right? The sidewalk ordinance in Oakland, right? Things like that, okay? Make sure you read that. Home warranty, and then of course the disclosures, right? Okay. We touched on the home hardening last week, so this is part of that, okay? Let's see, okay. Buyer's investigations, right? So the buyer has the right to investigate. Remember last week we talked about the access to the property, right? That the buyer should have at least 17 days, or don't let them to put it to 0, right? Okay. Okay. So this is the title, time periods. Okay, talked about that. Continuous removal last week. Okay, now we're gonna get into repairs, right? So Sujata, right? So you can see number 15, correct? Yes.
Mhm.
You want to read it for us? Did you know this existed? Right, a lot of agents don't know this existed, right? Just like the financing worksheet, a lot of agents didn't know that existed. So you want to read number 15 for us?
For me?
Yeah, can you read it?
Okay, yes, sure.
Yeah.
Repairs shall be completed prior to final verification of condition unless otherwise agreed. Repairs to be performed at seller's expense may be performed by seller or through others, provided that the work complies with the applicable law, including governmental permit, inspection, and approval requirements. Repair shall be performed in good, skillful manner with material of quality and appearance comparable to existing materials. Buyer acknowledges that exact restoration of appearance or cosmetic items following all repairs may not be possible. Seller shall obtain invoices and receipts for repairs performed by others. Prepare a return statement indicating the repairs performed by seller and the date of such repairs, and provide copies of invoice and paid receipts and statements to buyer prior to final verification of condition.
Right. What did you just read?
Hmm.
Right? Okay. That's
Yeah.
That's a mouthful, right?
That's right.
Okay. So we have to understand this. And this, a lot of agents don't understand the contract or haven't read the contract line by line, right? Remember,
Right.
every month, right? From now on, you guys gonna read the contract, right? Every page, right? So like this part, okay? A lot of agents don't understand this. Okay. Yeah, they'll say, oh, the seller did the work. Well, see, here's the thing. Remember earlier, Steven will give me a request for repair. You guys understand that form, RRRR form, right?
Right.
So request for repair. So, Steven says, hey, seller to repair this, right? That. So now as a listing agent, I have to prepare a response for that form. So we would respond by either saying yes, or we'll do part of it, or now remember, if I agreed to do it, I have to follow all what this says, right? Hire someone, right? Okay. We have to make sure it complies, right? The seller, right, may be performed by the seller or through others, right? Now, towards Roman numeral 2, right? It says prepare written statement indicating the repairs performed by buyer and by seller and plus the date repairs, right? So again, we still have to, we have to provide proof that it was done, right? Either receipts, right? If it was done by others, or if it's just the seller, I have to have a statement that says seller repaired, the floors, right? Seller repaired, all section 1 items, on this date, right? That's what it says, right? I have to show proof what I did and when I did. When I say I'm talking about the seller, right? When did it happen, right? Now, a lot of buyers agent don't bother asking for these things. That's why deals close and nothing happens until someone complains later on, right? And that's where we have to unravel it. So as a good buyer's agent, you need to do this. As a better listing agent, you need to make sure you're complying with this statement, right? Because again, governmental permit, inspection, approval requirements, changing a water heater requires permits. Technically changing your faucet, your toilet requires permits, okay? So there's a lot of things that require permits, okay? And again, I know that will considerably may delay your transaction. So So in this case, Stephen asked me to do these things, right? Okay, now I will, now seller says, oh, I'm going to do the work themselves, right? I'm not going to hire a home guard. That's too expensive. I'm going to hire my own guys, or I'm going to do the work myself. Okay, great. So how do I respond? I'm not going to respond by saying, yes, we'll agree to do it. Okay, I'm going to respond, yes, we agree to do it. Seller will complete all the work by themselves. Seller will not obtain any permits, for the work. That's how I would need to respond it that way, because otherwise, this part here says I can do the work, but I have to get permits. Okay, so again, if you're going to hire a handyman, seller will do the work or will hire a handyman, an unlicensed. Remember, handyman can be licensed or not, right? An unlicensed handyman to do the work, and will not obtain any permits for the work. Okay, that protects the seller now. Now the buyer has the right to say, no, 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 no. We want a fully licensed contractor. We want you to get permits, right? So they can respond back. This is where the negotiations happens with regards to repairs. So be careful not to, or not know how to understand this part, depending on who you are on each side of the transaction. Because Stephen needs to do his job. I need to do my job as a listing agent, right? Okay, in this case. So make sure, Sujata, if you're a listing agent, you follow this. If you're a buyer's agent, you follow this, right?
Yes.
Again, if the other agent is not willing to provide this for you, let's say Stephen says, hey, Greg, give me the receipts or give me a list of items you did. Remember, these are lists of items you did during escrow. This has nothing to do with what you did before. That's part of the disclosures, okay? So that's separate. This is repairs during escrow, okay? So yeah, so if I say, oh, Stephen, I'm not going to give you that, right? This buyer can actually, sue us for specific performance, or if let's say I don't provide it, right? The buyer can then say, hey, then I'm not going to close, because now as a listing agent seller, we are now not complying with the contract. We are now in default of the contract because we're not following this clause of the contract, okay? Because if you don't get permits, technically, I am default, right? So the buyer, has the option to back out and say, hey, you didn't hire a contractor, or you didn't tell me that you're hiring a handyman, right? With no permits. Hey, we're backing out. Now, the seller says, okay, fine, go back out, right? I'll find me another buyer. That can happen too. But again, this is where negotiations happen. And this is where the understanding of the contract is very critical, because someone's going to say, hey, did you read the contract? Hey, this is what it says on the contract. All right. So make sure you guys read this contract before the end of the year, or watch those videos, right? Many times, because in those videos, every line is actually explained, okay, in detail, okay? Remember, there's 3 types of videos. The first one, the 2.5 one from Southern California, is a little shorter. So that talks more about the highlights of the changes. Will Che, with Intero, did 2 sessions, basically 2 hours each, through our Moxie, which is very good, very detailed, right? Of the contract, he broke down actually every line, okay? And then, of course, there's the car one, okay, which they basically combined the 2 conversation and made it into like a 8-session, 1 hour at a time type of video, okay? So make sure you guys watch all those. And, again, the best thing to do is read the contract and then come with questions, as some of you guys have done, okay? Because that's the best way. All right, so Sujacha, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Greg.
Perfect. All right, anybody else have any questions regarding the contract, right? Remember, the contract is a guideline until there's a problem, right? So if it's like I said, the contract is like your GPS. If Sujata gets from Fremont to Tracy, no big deal, right? But if it takes her 5 hours, hey, that's fine too. She got there, right? So, but again, until there's a problem, right? No one's going to look at this contract a second time, right? Because remember, what does the buyer want? Well, how much am I paying and when do I move in? Well, what does the seller want? How much am I getting and when do I move out, right? Everything else is left to the agents to understand. But remember, we're not parties to the transaction, right? We guide them to the transaction, right? But yet they're the ones that needs to do the work. So if, let's say in that example earlier where the heater goes down, right? We're not the ones who's going to be calling HVAC companies, right? Unless you decide to take that on. You tell the seller, hey, you need to find an HVAC person to fix that. Okay. If you need recommendations, I can, try to find some recommendations. Remember, if you recommend somebody, you better vet them, you better make sure that they are reliable. And if not, then you say, hey, I found a couple of names on the yellow pages or on the internet. Here are some names, but you may want to interview them to see who you want to hire. Don't say, oh, call ABC, heating. Okay, because they're going to assume that you've already vetted these people, that they're licensed and all that stuff, okay, and that they're trustworthy. So be careful who you guys refer to your clients, because you're sticking your neck out on behalf of that company. All right, so get referrals from other agents, okay, or at least interview them before you refer them. All right, so any more questions about the contract before we start to wrap up and kind of send you on your way today? Anything specific? We're good?
Yep.
Okay, so again, oh, I hear bells. Anu. Okay, so someone got their wings. Angels got their wings. All right. Okay. So if not, there's no other questions, please reach out to me or to your leadership team. And again, please watch the videos either on YouTube, Moxie, or okay. So other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow morning as we talk about closing costs a little bit further, and then we'll talk a little about some suggestions on how to package your loan products to make your offers better, or to at least help out your buyers in lowering their interest rate, because that's what's happening right now. Interest rates are increasing. So how do we lower interest rates? By understanding how points work. All right. So I'm going to try to get someone from CalCoast, maybe Ritu or somebody else. If not, I'll give you guys some homework by talking to one of your loan officers. Other than that, I will see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Also Thursday, as we talk about planning for 2022. All right. So anything else? All right, ladies and gents, thanks for coming in. I will see you guys tomorrow at 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Greg. Have a good day.
All right, you too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.